Hello game fans and welcome to another video from Game Anglia, and today I am talking to the legend that is John Romero, and he's come here to do a Q&A for the day, and most famous for creating the genre-defining Doom. So I've got a few questions, and the first one was going to be, you have over 100 games to your name, not since Doom but even before Doom. Whereabouts do you find your inspiration and how do you start a project?
That's different for every game. It's kind of funny. When I come up with an idea for a game, it's because I feel a certain way and I want to make something like something, you know, that makes me feel a certain way, and usually there's a design behind that. So it's every game is different, every single one. Like as an example, Gunman Taco Truck was Donovan's idea. Yeah. Totally Donovan's idea. But when we started to work on his idea, we wanted it to be our idea as well. So our humor is in it, and his design ideas are all over it. But then real game ramping and balancing and all that kind of stuff is all in there. So it's a proper game. But it started with him, and then with other games, it was maybe a group idea. You know, we just came up with what do we want to do next? Like with Doom, and that was kind of based off of Dungeons and Dragons games that we'd played, and but taking the idea of what happened at the end of the campaign, and then kind of taking it into the future, and then adding some sci-fi to it, and so like, and the reason why some ideas happen is they're so different. Like, I go to a social game company and I'm going to make my first Facebook game, and I find out, oh, that's the audience. The audience is 43-year-old women. Yeah. Okay, so let's see what games out there are really popular with that demographic, and I find out, and I basically analyze the game and go, okay, I can totally make one of these. This would be really fun, and come up with something that's absolutely perfect for that demographic, and I have to love it as well. Yeah. And then it started because a company needed help, and I came to consult, and then I designed for a demographic, and that's totally different than all the other things I've done. Like, they're all different. And
didn't Doom start off as like a tank game almost?
No, I mean, the first 3D shooter that we made was called Hover Tank 1, which was made 2.5 years before Doom was released. And it was really our first 3D game. It was made in 2 months. Yeah. And it was solid fill polygon walls, and the very first implementation of 3D for our company. And it was about 6 months after that we did our second 3D game, but that had texture mapped walls, and it was faster. It was more fun than Hover Tank. It was you cruising around as a mage throwing fireballs, which was still not very cool. But then Wolfenstein came right after that, and that is what felt really great. And that's why we stuck with, guns feels really good instead of fireballs and a tank, which was like from Battlezone, a long time ago.
And you mentioned Donovan and the Gunman Taco Truck. Has bringing your son into the family business, has it changed how you look at game design? Because obviously when you work with a son or daughter, you sort of not treat them differently, but maybe you change how you teach.
Well, yeah, we asked him a lot of questions. We didn't treat him like a kid because he wants to be in game development. So we just talked to him and asked him questions that we would normally ask somebody who's serious about doing something. So when he says something's really cool, we ask, well, why do you think it's cool? Like, what is it about it that's cool? And then he'll say why, and then we'll say, okay, so what you mean is that the reward system and the feedback, visual feedback, actually looks really good for that, and the balance of the reward that you get is better than the normal rewards that you would get at the area that you're at. And, so he's understanding why he feels a certain way in the game, and it just kind of breaks down, and it's like, well, why don't you come up with some of those ideas for this one too,
give him the language to explain his feelings,
right,
in a sort of a game sense.
Yeah, so not treating him like a little kid, but try to get him up to the level as fast as you can, which is kind of what we did with what I did with our oldest son when he wanted to get into game development, and he went through a games college in about 1 year, 7 months. He basically went in just barely knowing how to code, because I had him for about 5 months at the office just learning how to program on his own in C. Goes through this program, and when he comes out, he's a C++ programmer doing 3D graphics. He knows how to code. He knows how to do matrix calculations and invert everything. And then I got him started on something that junior. He was still like very junior. Like he still didn't have he had no experience in the industry. But then I started him working on something that you never do until you're a senior, which was start writing an abstracted game engine where you could make it run on any platform. Here's the API and here's the hardware interface. Okay. And so he basically wrote a really cool engine, and that helped him get his first job pretty easily.
Oh, fantastic. So yes, that's kind of where you started as well. You wanted to build the engine before the game, and
yeah, you kind of a long time ago, before engines, people didn't make engines. They made games by getting the core loop working first, usually. Sometimes you would just draw the screen, like you draw the frame of the screen and maybe some walls or whatever you're doing. You're like getting some of that there, and then you try and make a character move around in it. And so it's like a little piece by piece, you're putting a game together versus an engine. So you're having to build, like, it's very organic, and it changes a lot. You delete a lot of stuff and you rewrite a bunch of stuff, and it's really, you're making something around a character on the screen versus writing a vast amount of code that's an engine that then can support something on top of it. You're writing the actual game itself with like nothing around it, so it was very different back then. It's different nowadays because now games exist, game engines exist, and you totally start out with a massive foundation nowadays, but back then it was just hardly any code to just put something on the screen and kind of build up slowly.
And sort of outside of digital game development, you're a big fan of D&D. Do you think it's important for indie game developers, or just game developers as a whole, to play board games?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, board games are mechanics, and that's what games are as well. A game is its mechanics. If you don't have mechanics, you don't really have a game. Mm-hmm. So story is great, but it's not the most important part of a game. It's really like, what are you doing second to second? Yeah. And that's how games are different than everything else that's out there, all the other forms of media. So
mechanic first.
So mechanics are first, yeah, and story can come on later, and sometimes the story will change because it's the mechanics. Okay. You're getting the mechanics down, and it's like, what? Because of the way that this feels, I think a jetpack would make this feel even better, which means I'm now in the future a little bit. Yeah. So I'm going to change the story to be this. You know how easy it is to change the story. Yeah. It's not that easy to get mechanics done right. Okay. That's a lot of work. So you really focus on those mechanics, get that stuff working and feeling good, and you can put any kind of story you want on that.
Okay. And so you are the co-founder and founder of 9 companies now, is that right? And obviously at Game Anglia, there's a lot of young developers coming in that are either going to be joining studios or starting their own. I know there's a lot of sort of one-man and small teams starting out. Is there any kind of advice that you give to people starting their own studio or their own company?
There's a ton of advice.
How long have we got?
Yeah, I know. There's the I'm not professional, but I'm going to start making games, and I don't have anything but my own name. I want to have a studio name, that kind of stuff. I would, at the very beginning, just create your studio name, get the domain, the .com, if you can, because that's really important to just have that .com. And if the .com doesn't exist, probably don't name your company that, because someone else already has that name. So so basically, kind of get that identity straightened out. You don't really need to incorporate. You just need to get your name down. If you're gonna publish, the easiest way to do it is on iOS. You just use your own personal name, and you can say that you're with whatever, Tiger Scratch Studios or something. Yeah. But just go under your own name at the very beginning. It's a lot more involved if you incorporate, and then you have to get all kinds of tax ID numbers. and then you have to kind of create your identity on iOS differently using that. And you have to have a bank account for business, you know, like all kinds of stuff. But if you do have all of that stuff set up, you know, because you are actually professional and you're going to go out there doing that, if you're co-founding a company with people, it's incredibly important that you know those co-founders better than anybody you've ever known.
Yeah. You're going to more of a paperwork than a marriage, I think.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's like a marriage. If you're co-founding a company, you're marrying somebody.
Yeah.
And always assume at the very beginning what happens when this thing falls apart, because it's gonna.
Yeah.
It's just gonna happen. And if it doesn't, you're the luckiest person in the world.
Well, it's healthy for the industry as well. I mean, you should never really stay in a company too long. You want to keep changing and teaming up with new people, because it keeps it fresh.
Yes.
Keeps you changing and on your toes.
Yeah, it's funny because there's something to the increased value with a static team that knows that knows each other really well and knows what each other can do, and has built on top of stuff over and over and over and over. When you have to start over every time with somebody new, you're kind of falling backwards a little bit, right? So there's pros and cons to both of those things. You know, Ozzy Osbourne changes guitarists every, so many years. Like, that's what he does.
Yeah.
And he's done really, really well. But a band is a totally different dynamic than like a game dev team.
Yeah.
So it may or may not work out the same way.
Okay. And Romero Games, your latest studio, they're currently recruiting. And so what do you tend to look for when you're putting it out there? What core qualities do you look for outside of just industry experience? So what else do you look for in a developer or a designer that's outside of just simple?
Well, number one, we look at how many games they've worked on. People that get out of school, they haven't made games usually, but if they have, because they have school projects or whatever on the side, those are more important to us. The fact that somebody graduated from game school is like, okay, that's good, they taught you something, but we know tons and tons of schools that we never would say that's the best thing that you could ever be taught, right?
What have you done with the knowledge?
Or what knowledge did you get?
Yeah.
What did they teach you? I don't need that knowledge here, So the fact that you graduated somewhere, we don't know what those degrees actually were, what you were taught.
Yeah.
So we can't really take that as like, oh, you graduated from there, you win, you're hired. We can't do that. So all we get out of that is, well, you spent X amount of time getting this degree and the amount of money to get it, so you're serious. So that's good, you're serious. Now I know you're serious. Okay, how serious are you? How many games have you actually made in your spare time? Do you care that much about games that you will just make them, when you're not paid? So the amount of games that somebody makes is super important to us. If someone's in the industry, how many games have you worked on? That kind of stuff. What kind of games have you worked on? Are they really good games? Are they games that everybody, that has won awards? That kind of stuff is really important. So when we get past that beginning part of, yes, you totally are somebody that we want to work with, then we look to then we basically look, why should I not hire you? Because at this point it's easy to say we should hire you. Why should we not hire you? Absolutely shouldn't. Yeah. And then we go forensic and we go all over the place. We call people, we know everybody that, if we need to hire someone that has been on anything that's really known, well, we know people that they've worked with.
Yeah.
Right? So we get in contact with people through, emails or phone calls or whatever. And if any of that stuff turns up negative, we didn't waste really any time flying people over or anything. It's just like, nope, we just found out that you post on Nazi websites or something.
Yeah.
So, we found that out.
The importance of having your social media reflect the kind of person that you are.
Exactly. That's at least some of it, right? There's other things not on social media that you can find out that reflect the person as well. Yeah. And we've done that as well. So, then the person comes in to the studio, and then it's a culture fit situation. Are you a culture fit? Does your personality match our personality? because we don't want people that have egos. We don't want people that have any kind of weird issues. We want people that fit in with everybody else, so it's going to be really smooth working with somebody.
Yeah.
So do you have a decent sense of humor? Are you a nice person? You know, is your voice not annoying? Just all kinds of little things, you know, because these are people that you're going to be with every day, more hours than you are awake at home.
Yeah.
Right? So, so it's important that you're like building a family almost, and for a small company, it's more important because you're going to be knowing them really well, versus a really big company where we might not see them and it might not matter, you know, as much. So yeah, we spend a lot of time on that recruiting process.
Okay, and Romero Games is based in Galway in Ireland. I mean, you've also got Blizzard there, you've got Zynga there, but what is the game development scene like in Ireland, and in particular in Galway and where you are?
Well, there's probably about 10 different game companies just in Galway. And they're pretty, you know, they're all indie companies, other than EA. EA's got 400 people in Galway. But the indie scene is awesome. Every month there's meetups at the local pub. At one of the pubs, there's like 100 around us. At one of the pubs where we have a back room and we have huge screens and people play each other's games and just hang out and talk. There's one game a month that happens every month for, you know, if you're making a game, it doesn't matter if you're making a game a month, but at least every month you're showing progress on a game and you're showing everybody in the room. And these people aren't even the same people that you see a lot of times at the other gathering every month. So there are Galway game jams, you know, there's global game jams, Ludum Dares, all that kind of stuff for people to get together. And not to mention the various conferences that pop up, and then everybody goes and meets up there too. So we see each other a lot, walking down the street, eating lunch together. It's everybody kind of sticks together there, and then that's not even talking about Dublin, which has its own scene with the Bluto that happens every single month, and in the bigger companies that are over there. There's a lot going on in Ireland, you know, even though you wouldn't be able to tell outside of Ireland so much, not until, you know, the country creates a Minecraft type, you know, atomic bomb. But everybody's really working on it. Everyone's trying to get there, you know, everyone's trying to get better, and everybody is very much sharing or rooting everybody else on. So if someone's successful, everyone's extremely happy for it. Nobody's jealous. Because everybody can learn from it, and Irish people just aren't that way anyway. Everyone's very happy and likes to help each other. So it's a great it's just a perfect indie community. Everybody's just very cool.
I noticed on a tweet a couple of days ago that you'd recently hired Miha Dobrin, as 3D artist. I noticed on his portfolio he did a lot of sort of monsters and demons. Was that something that drew you to him?
No, it was just the quality of his work. It was really high quality, and now that he's working at our studio, his stuff that he's working on in the studio is way better than his portfolio. So, you know, it's pretty cool. He's a super nice guy. Mihai comes from Romania, and has worked on Dishonored and Rift and just a bunch of cool games. You know, Witcher 3. I mean, he's just done just some really cool stuff, and what he's doing for us looks unbelievable. Like, we're really happy that he's there.
Yeah, when I saw your website with the Native American character on it, and then I saw Mila's work with Rift and these sort of flying demons, and all these sort of thoughts were going through my mind where it's like Torok Monster Hunter or something like that. So I was like, okay,
what's the mashup?
Yeah, what's going to happen? So really looking forward to seeing what's being produced by Romero Games. I know you can't talk about it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so both you and Brenda are here today to talk to the students, and you're both literally legends in gaming. I think you even have awards to say that you were
gaming legend.
Yeah. And so obviously working together and living together, has working with Brenda in particular, change your perspective on game design and possibly like social responsibility in gaming and how you look at your future projects?
It's one of the things that's really was really interesting was when I was, say, making that social game. It's a game for women. Obviously, I'm not, but I'm making a game for a totally different gender, and Brenda was the creative director there. So when I was working on that first social game, this was the first time that we actually worked on the game together, and there was the game that I made had like good and evil parts to the game, right? And so the evil part would scare characters in the game, and they would be afraid, and you would kind of comfort them and all that. But then with Brenda playing the game, she felt bad leaving the game because she knew that when she came back, everyone was terrified, and she didn't like that feeling, like thinking that everyone's just being terrified while she's gone. She can't be there to save them. So she told me how she felt about the game, and so I had to solve that problem in game design so she would feel okay leaving the game, that wouldn't happen. So when she came back, nobody was afraid because of a game design feature I put in there. And so getting the female perspective has always been really important to get the game design, because there's stuff that I would design that I have no idea how a woman would feel, and then she feels a certain way, and then I can easily change the game design. It doesn't violate the stuff I love in the game.
Yeah.
It just changes it just a little bit, and then she's totally cool with it, and I was always cool with the whole thing, and that new tweak didn't invalidate the reason why I liked it. So getting the female perspective with Brenda has always been super important, and so we do that for our games, whether she's on the same game I'm on or not. You know, if we're on the same game, obviously her perspective is there. When I'm on a different game, she's always going to have her perspective. You know.
Yeah. Mm. Well, I'm afraid this next question is from a personal perspective. So I was a big fan of the Commander Keen games, and I was just wondering if you were would you ever be tempted to reimagine the Commander Keen games, and what would that look like?
So, so Commander Keen is Tom Hall, right? Like that's his game. Up to even Wolfenstein, you know, like Tom had created all the games that we had worked on. He was the creative director, so he was the main game designer. And so he, you know, I was part of making all of those games as doing kind of half the design, but the initial creative direction was in his hands because that was his job. We only had 4 of us, and one was an artist, and the other 3 of us actually we all coded, except Tom spent his time doing pure design, and I did coding and design, and then Carmack just did coding. So we had an interesting mix of stuff. Like Tom even did art. Adrian does art all day. Tom does some art. He does all design. I do design and programming. Carmack does programming. So we had a really great overlap.
Yeah.
And so Tom is, you know, like that's his character. That's his series. And we finished making our last Commander Keen in December of 1991, and that was it. We'd made 7 within a year, and that was, you know, Tom wanted to keep on making Commander Keen, and when we started in 1992, the very beginning of 92, we started making Keen 7. We started working on it, but decided only after a couple of weeks. We'd even made a cool demo of VGA parallaxing, like what would the new engine do, and basically just went, you know what, we don't want to do this anymore. That Catacomb 3D thing was really cool. We should do 3D. And so we veered off into 3D and did Wolfenstein at that point, and never looked back at Commander Keen, although Tom always thought about Keen. And he wanted to finish that trilogy, you know, the trilogy of trilogies, basically, like, you know, George Lucas. So, so he imagined what Keen would be like, because now it's like things are 3D and everything. So he came up with Commander Keen in 3D, but we didn't make it because we're doing this, and then we're doing this, and then we're doing this, and they're all hardcore. They're not cute kid bouncing around and platforming, right? But then when Mario 64 came out, he was crushed because that was his idea. He'd already come up with that design for Commander Keen, jumping around in a 3D world and cameras and all that stuff. So he was kind of really devastated when he saw, you know, loved Mario 64, but like he invented that idea, that game, years before it actually was out. But that's what it would be most likely. And we've seen lots of newer games, like I guess was it Brad Rogers, you know, as a character that was an amalgamation of a lot of 90s characters. And like that would be a side-scrolling version of Keen, but Tom would totally be 3D, you know, with Commander Keen. And I agree, it should be something like, you know, Mario Odyssey or whatever.
Okay. And so this last question then. So we're going to take you back in time. It's your first day on the job back at Origin, 1987. And then all of a sudden you come time traveling through as you are now, and you can give yourself a piece of advice. What would you say to your younger self who's just starting out in the games industry?
I'd say when you leave id Software in the future, make sure that you only have Tom Hall as a co-founder. That's all I need to say. Everything will change from that day on, you know. But yeah, that's pretty much that's the only thing that I would have probably changed was that.
Oh, okay, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, look, thank you very much for joining me.
Cool.
Thank you. And if anyone has found this video useful, please give it a like, give it a thumbs up, add your comments below, and we'll be back with another interview very soon.